You know, there's a 2,400-year-old secret from ancient Greece that can help you win pretty much any argument. And I can almost guarantee it's not what you think it is.
Think about it. We all assume that the key to being persuasive is having all the answers, right? You need that one perfect statistic, that killer comeback. But what if the real secret, the actual key to winning, is the complete opposite?
You see, most of us, myself included, spend our whole lives falling into what you could call the answer trap. We gather up facts, we stockpile knowledge, and we operate under the assumption that the person with the most information is the one with all the power. But back in ancient Athens, there was this guy, Socrates, who became the most feared thinker of his day. And it wasn't because of the answers he gave, it was because of the questions he asked. He didn't give big, grand speeches. Nope. He just started conversations that had a funny way of exposing the truth. In his whole philosophy, his entire worldview, it started right here with this one idea. His incredible power came from a place of, well, profound intellectual humility. While everyone else around him was absolutely certain about what they knew, Socrates' secret weapon was admitting he didn't know anything at all.
So, okay, if answers aren't the goal, then what is? Well, for Socrates, the question itself is the key. It's the tool that unlocks genuine understanding, and his specific technique for using it became famously known as the Socratic Method.
Now, this isn't about trying to dominate someone in a debate or just prove them wrong for the sake of it. It's actually a cooperative search for the truth. You use this really disciplined way of questioning to help someone else, and hey, yourself too, to really examine a belief, find the flaws in its logic, and then, together, arrive at a much stronger conclusion. And Socrates had this amazing analogy for what he was doing. He called himself a midwife of ideas. He truly believed the truth wasn't something he could just hand to you. He thought it was already inside of you. His questions were simply the tools to help you give birth to it. Pretty cool, right? All right, so how does this actually work in a real conversation? Let's break it down and walk through a classic masterclass in logic. It's between Socrates and a very confident young man named Euthydemus. So, on one side, you've got Euthydemus. He is 100% sure he knows exactly what justice is. And on the other side, you've got Socrates, who, remember, claims to know nothing and says he's just going to ask a few questions to see if that certainty holds up. And so the conversation begins. Socrates asks for a definition of injustice. And Euthydemus, full of confidence, replies that things like lying and theft are obviously unjust. Seems simple enough, right? I mean, who would argue with that? And here it comes, the first test. Socrates poses a counterexample. Is a general being unjust if he lies to the enemy or steals their supplies to protect his own soldiers? All of a sudden, that really clear-cut definition, it's starting to look a little shaky. Euthydemus has to adjust. He's forced to refine his definition. Okay, he says, the morality depends on who you're doing it to. It's unjust to do these things to your friends, but it's totally just when you do them to your enemies. He probably thinks he's nailed it. But Socrates isn't finished. He hits him with another scenario. What about a commander who lies to his own troops, his friends, to stop them from panicking, and in doing so, saves their lives? And just like that, the new definition completely collapses. Lying to a friend is now just? Euthydemus is trapped. He's cornered by a contradiction that he himself created. So, what we just saw, that wasn't random. It's a repeatable, four-step process. First, you get someone to state a core belief they hold. Second, you ask them to define it clearly. Third, you introduce a clever counterexample that breaks their definition. And finally, you reveal the contradiction. The whole point is to push both of you toward a deeper, more accurate understanding. So it's an incredibly powerful tool for getting to the truth. But what happens when the truth you uncover is one that powerful people really don't want anyone to find? What happens when this intellectual tool becomes a political weapon? Well, Athens, the famous cradle of democracy, started to see Socrates as a major threat. And why? Because he used this very method to publicly question everything. He was exposing the ignorance of powerful generals and respected politicians in front of everyone, and his students, totally inspired by this, started doing the same thing. So when two of his former pupils were involved in acts of treason, the state finally had the excuse it was looking for. This timeline really shows the tragic journey. A new way of thinking leads to influence, which then leads to challenging authority. That, in turn, leads to being accused of corrupting the youth, and ultimately, it leads to a death sentence.
I mean, let that sink in for a second. This simple process of just asking clarifying questions, of demanding that people's beliefs make logical sense, was seen as so dangerous to the powers that be that their only solution was to execute the man who perfected it.
And all of this brings us to one final Socratic question, the one we really have to turn on ourselves. Because this method isn't just for debating other people, it's a tool for looking at our own most cherished beliefs. In a world that is so full of certainty, what is one core belief you hold that you've never really truly put to the test?